The courtroom was silent, so quiet that only Thor's heavy breathing could be heard. Sergeant Nathan Carter took his seat in his wheelchair. His uniform was old, but the medals still glittered on his chest, each one a silent witness to years gone by and years lost. Thor, standing beside him, was not just a dog. He was the only being he had ever pulled from the battlefield, the one who pierced the silence of death with his bark, the one who kept him alive. To Nathan, he was not just a friend. He was a brother. He was family. As the judge's voice filled the courtroom, everyone's gaze locked on the same spot, Sergeant Carter. "This may be your last chance to speak." Nathan's fingers trembled slightly. He tightened the leash a little more. Thor didn't move. His gaze was steady. He was on duty, as he always was. "Your Honor." Nathan's voice rose slowly. Its timbre was deep. It echoed the battle within him. "This dog, Thor, he's my comrade in arms. He saved my life many times. In battle, yes, but mostly after it was over." There was a murmur in the hall. Some bowed their heads, some held their breath. "When I got home, I couldn't even look in the mirror. He was there every morning. He looked me in the eye. He gave me a reason to stand up. And now, you're taking him away from me because you gave him a number. A file number, a mission, but she's not a mission. She's my last link. Please, please don't take her away from me." The air in the hall grew heavy. Someone wiped away tears. A woman took a deep breath. The judge studied Nathan in silence, but before the verdict was even announced, the unexpected happened. Thor leapt to his feet. Pulling the leash from Nathan's hand, he lunged forward. A harsh, sharp bark broke the silence of the hall. People were startled. The bailiffs were about to move, but Nathan knew. Thor didn't bark at random. It was a warning, just like on those dark nights, just like on the battlefield. The silence in the hall was shattered by Thor's sudden reaction. A powerful bark echoed, sharp, short and full of warning, and Nathan's hand felt the leash tighten. Thor lunged forward. His eyes were fixed. This wasn't just a bark. This was Thor's danger signal. For a moment, everyone froze. The bailiffs took a step forward, but Nathan held up his hand. "No," he said. "I've been through this many times before." He's sensing something. Thor moved slowly toward the front of the courtroom, toward the judge's desk. Every step was careful. His eyes were fixed on the door. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, please keep your dog under control." Nathan's eyes were still on Thor. "Your Honor, he doesn't do this randomly." A few spectators began to speak in whispers. Some seemed to smile. "It's just a dog," they said. But to Nathan, Thor's every move meant something. Just like that night in the desert, when he stopped inches from a landmine. Just like that night when he silently shielded himself. And now, he was repeating the same behavior. Thor's posture stiffened. He turned his head towards the door. His ears pricked up. A low, deep growl came from his chest, followed by a second bark. The whole hall shuddered. Nathan came forward a little in his wheelchair. "This version of him appeared before every threat I've seen in battle. He knows it. He's protecting us." The judge took off his glasses. His hand reached for the gavel, but stopped before he struck it. Hesitation, fear, or instinct. One of the bailiffs whispered, "I think something is approaching." Thor took another step forward, nose in the air, muscles tensed, and then slowly, with an almost invisible vibration, he stopped. Nathan held his breath. "This is something else. You can be in a courtroom, but this is no longer just a trial. This is the echo of an impending threat." And Thor had already heard it. There were more glances towards the door, but still no one had seen anything. And yet, Thor had seen, or felt it, that silence. That silence was no longer calm, it was pre-storm. Nathan slowly turned his wheelchair toward the door. His eyes were on his dog, but his mind was much farther away. Iraq, 2009. A quiet night. A man approached the campsite. Thor stopped. Just like this, quiet but steady. He didn't bark. He didn't look back. He just looked. He had saved 3 soldiers that night. Now he saw the same look, the same posture, the same silence, the same tension. The judge seemed frozen on the bench. He lowered his glasses and frowned. "This is not normal," he muttered. A bailiff slowly stood up. He took 2 steps towards the door. "It's just a dog," someone in the back row whispered. But in that moment, everyone in the hall began to realize that it wasn't just a thing. Thor's hair stood on end. His ears perked up. His breathing was heavy but measured. It was as if he was chasing a shadow, but the shadow was not yet visible. Nathan turned to the judge. His voice was clearer this time. "Your Honor, this is not instinct. This is training. This is a sense of survival. Thor taught me for years to sense everything. If he's looking at that door like that, there's something behind that door." A bailiff approached the door, his hand close to his weapon. The silence was now heavy as breath. And then the door creaked. No one pushed. No one had approached, but the heavy, aged wood slowly opened inward. Something was approaching. Thor didn't bark. He only growled, a deep, full sound. His eyes darkened, locked in the doorway. "Get ready," Nathan whispered. He didn't know who he was telling. To himself? To Thor? Maybe both. The darkness seeping through the doorway was expanding. It was as if something was slowly flowing into the courtroom, like a shadow, unseen but felt. Everyone held their breath. Thor's growl was no longer low. It deepened. Danger was imminent. One of the bailiffs took another step towards the door. He reached for his gun but didn't draw it. Nathan's eyes locked with Thor's. This is one of those moments, he thought. The dead silence just before the battle begins. Then someone stepped through the doorway. His first step was silent. His second step echoed. He was wearing a long, dark coat, a hood over his head. His face was in shadow. His hands were in his pockets. His steps were slow, calm, but fear was spreading through the hall. Thor felt like he was going to jump out of his seat. Pulling on the leash, Nathan struggled. "Stop, boy," he whispered. The judge stood up. "What the hell is this?" His voice was shaking. The man didn't speak. He came closer. His eyes were locked on Thor. "Get back," the bailiff said. He didn't stop. He slowly took his hand out of his pocket. He was holding something. Thor immediately started barking madly. There was shouting. Chairs toppled over. A woman's scream echoed through the hall. Bailiff drew his gun. "Drop it!" he shouted. The man's lips moved slightly. "I just want the dog," he said. His voice was cold and disturbing. Nathan's heart seemed to stop. "What do you mean, just the dog?" Thor had never acted like this before. This hadn't even happened on the battlefield. "We want what's inside her," the man said, his voice too low to be heard, but Nathan heard it. "Inside her?" Bailiff took a step closer to the man. "Drop your weapon." The man showed him what he was holding, a small metal key. "The doors must open," he said. "Thor is one of them." And then everything snapped. Thor snapped the leash. He lunged forward, barking, screams, shouts, chaos in the hall. Nathan yelled, "No, Thor, come back!" But there was determination in the dog's eyes. He was no longer just protecting. He was attacking, because he knew something, and no one was going to stop him. Thor lunged forward. He had snapped the leash. The barks echoing through the hall were no longer just warnings. It was an attack. It was protection. Everyone scattered. Some people collapsed on the floor. Some knocked over chairs. The judge stood up but froze, not knowing what to do. The man was still standing. Hands raised, a faint smile on his face. "I only know what he is," he said in a low voice. "He's one of us now." Nathan focused on Thor in all the chaos. His heart was pounding in his chest. "No," he whispered. "You are not just a dog, and you will never be theirs." Thor stood in front of the man, his teeth bared. His growl shook the hall. He kept his eyes on the man. Nathan came a little closer in his wheelchair. He no longer had the leash in his hand, but his heart was still connected. "Thor," he said softly. "Come back, boy. Stay with me." But Thor did not move. It was as if he had made a decision. Either he would stop everything now, or this hall would never be the same again. The man took another step. The key in his hand glowed. Thor lunged, fast, decisive, to the death. The man drew back, but too late. Thor barked. He charged, screaming, shouting, a gunshot. Everything was confused in an instant. Then, silence. Real silence. For a few seconds, only the breathing of people could be heard. The dust hung in the air. Not even the judge was moving. Then Nathan's voice was heard. "Thor." Silence again. "Thor!" And then a growl. Light. It's forced, but still there. Thor, he was on the ground, but he was standing. His chest was rising and falling fast. He was wounded, but he was there. Nathan lunged forward. He slid to the side. He put his hands on his dog. "I'm here, boy. I'm here." His eyes welled up. Everyone in the room looked like they'd just been through a war. But only one thing mattered at that moment. Thor was still alive, and he was still with Nathan. That hall was no longer a courtroom. It was a witness to a bond, a witness to true loyalty, a witness to the cry and the silence. The silence was heavy. Chairs overturned, papers scattered on the floor, people trying to figure out what had happened. But for Nathan, the world had stopped. His eyes were on Thor. He put his hand on his dog's head. His fur was matted with blood, but his eyes were still alive. He was strong. "You're still here, boy," he said in a whisper. Thor moved his head slightly. A small growl. He was alive. Nathan couldn't hold back the tears. "I'm so proud of you." Slowly, the people in the hall began to return to their seats. This dog was no longer just a military asset in anyone's eyes. The judge sat quietly in his seat. He still had the gavel in his hand, but he didn't bang it on the table. He just looked at Nathan, then Thor. He took a deep breath. "Sergeant Carter," he said, "this court is not your court. It's his court." Nathan looked up. Their eyes met. The judge's voice was brittle but clear. "That dog is no longer a case. He is your family. And this court unanimously agrees to keep him with you." A murmur went up in the courtroom. A few people clapped, but Nathan just looked at Thor. "You hear that? We're leaving, son. "We're going home." Thor's eyes closed slightly. He was resting, maybe for the first time in years. And in that hall, everyone was silent, but everyone had learned something. Loyalty cannot be written on paper. Only the living know it. They are not just dogs. They are warriors. They are family. And sometimes, they are the only voice that speaks in silence. The hall was empty. Only a few attendants were clearing the judge's desk and straightening the chairs. But Nathan was still there, silent, just like Thor. He sat in his wheelchair, his dog's head resting on his knee. His fingers ran slowly through Thor's fur. He wasn't thinking about the present or the future. He was just there. He was in the silence. But this silence was not frightening. This time there was peace. This time there was a friend, a warrior, a family staying with him. Thor's eyes were closed, but he was not sleeping. He was resting, maybe for the first time in years. Nathan lifted his head slightly to the sky. He sighed. "Good job, son," he said. "Very good job." He closed his eyes and listened. The courtroom was no longer a court. It was a monument, a symbol of loyalty, of courage, of an unspeakable bond. Maybe no one would understand. Maybe everyone would forget. But one thing was true for Nathan. Some bonds don't talk. They don't bark. They don't show. But they are felt, and they never disappear. Thor was not just a dog. He was the bond in silence, the silence bond.